This is The Masquerade by JT33, featuring Symbia. I'll put a link to the track in the chat so you can subscribe to that channel and check out all of their other tracks. We are live on Rofkin, Odyssey, DLive, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, a myriad of audio-only streams, and a number of YouTube channels should be popping up as well. Let's see who's here. Okay, oh yeah, that's right. I think we also have a Facebook channel open. I never log into Facebook. I'm always hit with all kinds of, it's like tickets. You go out and you get citations. It's like, oh, you thought crime, thought crime, thought crime. And I'm like, you know what? I served enough time in their jail. I don't even bother with Facebook. And I know they're being sued by 33 states, 42 lawyers. Totally not scripted. Joined by Diana South, Cubstar, Portal Complex Music, all over on DLive. We, G33, Elephant Tusks, Let's Go, Bullet 1536, and the HBIC. Okay, great. And speaking of Zuckerberg, he never did have that contest with Musk, which would have been stacked in Musk's favor. Androids don't have anything. If you know what I'm talking about, I'm sorry. Hopefully you missed that episode. But their fight never happened. They were supposed to actually have a physical fight, not just an anatomy test or contest, I guess. G33 says, I got 2 YouTube channels for you. Are there more? Yeah, there's a number of SOC accounts out there. The main one is Infinite Plane Society, which is the one you're on right now, or most of you are on. But I always delete because this channel is being targeted. And then the Infinite Plane Radio channel is where we do the live premiere the following mornings. So if you miss it at night and you want to catch it in the morning, I always do a replay. Yeah, the cage match never happened. But maybe they realized it doesn't matter if we fight. The public has no attention span. They won't remember it. Nor will they remember them hyping up something that never happened. So they got all the credit and all the publicity for the hype, and they didn't actually have to follow through with anything. It's kind of genius in a sense. In a Muskian sense. The title of today's live stream is Misinformation Flood in the Age of M.A.I.D.S. And I've been speaking about M.A.I.D.S a bit lately, and it's one of the topics in the IPS Insider Issue 1 that is currently in production. And it's going to be printed in less than a week. But we're talking about the information flood and how the public has been conditioned to be incapable of providing for itself its own mental immune system, meaning that basically the public will catch, quote, mind viruses. It has zero defense mechanism. It can't actually defend it. It will believe anything. I mean, look at all the dumb religions, the dumb cults, the ridiculous belief systems out there. Look at QAnon. And what you're looking at here is just an example of how the general public is ill-equipped to handle the misinformation age, and that's by design. This deluge of disinformation we're being subjected to is problem, reaction, solution. They want us to say, hey, we need the government to censor us because we cannot live in this mind virus rich environment. We're catching all these mind viruses because we don't have mental immune systems. And that's what M.A.I.D.S is. Mental acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. You know, in the movie Hot Skulls, which is about mind viruses that the public needs to be protected from, so the government locks everybody down and mandates earplugs. That's actually the whole process. The whole theme of the movie is locking down because of mind viruses. But they call what the public has, or what the disease, they call it acquired reasoning deficiency syndrome, ARDS. The ARDS patients. It's kind of a parody of reality, and it's kind of a mirror of how things really are. Diana South says the public needs vitamin C, S-E-E. Yeah, definitely. All right, now I haven't sent out text notifications. Maybe I should. We'll see what the numbers are like. Oswaldo says, don't M.A.I.D.S me, bro. Look, most people don't even know they have it. They don't know that a lot of the things they believe they acquired as a mind virus, which a mind virus as a construct, I mean, these things are not real. However, the concept has kind of worked its way into how we talk about ideas and how they spread by design. I think that they associated the idea itself with viruses because they wanted to eventually create the case for censorship. That there are, in fact, ideas that you can catch. And if you don't have the government to censor it for you, in other words, they want to, in a way, censorship, you can look at censorship as sort of a analogous to vaccination, or rather the quarantining, the separating of ideas. It's kind of like they've already set the stage, the public has accepted the premise, and now they're just going into the process of saying, okay, these ideas are infectious and we must protect the public against them. So if you're looking here, Virus of the Mind by Richard Brody, the new science of the meme, and it literally has a vaccination needle jabbing into a brain. I mean, how do you explain that? Well, they want you to have your mind vaxxed. That way, you're not susceptible to catching these mind viruses. And so the mind vaccination represents an injection of certain thought blocking cliches, and phobias, of course, are a huge part of it. Getting people to fear idea super spreaders, unvetted ideas, unvaxxed minds separate from the people with unvaxxed minds. Well, whose minds are unvaxxed? Well, the same ones whose bodies are unvaxxed, the ones who reject the mainstream media. But this is the beginning of it. And of course, Richard Brody, who wrote this book, is known for Microsoft Word, which explains everything here because we're talking about what thought crimes, ideas, or words, memes. Richard Brody, an American computer programmer and author, wrote the first version of Microsoft Word. So now you have the connection between Microsoft, viruses, and Bill Gates is kind of adjacent to this conversation. Bill Gates has to do with the physical viruses, and this guy's about mind viruses. And they use the physical virus as a pretext to say, we must do something about the spread of ideas. These are issues that have been promoted in tandem because they are part of the same. So let me go ahead and play this clip. This is Kamala Harris in London saying, when people around the world cannot discern fact from fiction because of a flood of misinformation. No, the reason why they cannot discern fact from fiction is because they have M.A.I.D.S. I can tell because I don't have that. I have a mental immune system. But what I'm saying here is that this is a contrived problem because they want the public to have M.A.I.D.S. So the public demands a vaccination. They demand forced vaccinations. I'm not talking about the needle, I'm talking about mentally. You're not getting on the internet unless we have your number and your ID and your everything. That's where we're getting at. So let me go ahead and play this clip. This is, again, Kamala Harris, we're one stumble, one slip away from her becoming president. Kamala Harris in London, when people around the world, and one other thing, speaking of President Joe Biden, he's talking about guardrails. Again, the term guardrails was not used with reference to media until we started using it to describe the process of diverting free thinkers back into the political horseshoe. Similar to gatekeepers, but I use the term guardrails because it's more like we're being pushed down a certain line, a trajectory, down their news-bent reality. The term guardrails, again, was our term, and now they're using it to talk about controls that they want to put over, quote, AI. Kamala Harris in London, again, when people around the world cannot discern fact from fiction because of AI-enabled mis and disinformation, I ask, is that not existential for democracy? Ironically, this is the first time it looks like her speech wasn't written by ChatGPT. Let me play this clip.
And when people around the world cannot discern fact from fiction because of a flood of AI enabled mis and disinformation. I ask, is that not existential for democracy?
Good question. Well, no, what's existential is the fact that people don't have a mental immune system to discern real from fake. We are reality impaired as a society. This hyper mediated reality, which becomes internalized, does not comport with the real thing, has many augmentations. It's not the real thing. It is, in fact, I would say, the de facto world state religion. And when I say MAIDs, I'm talking about mind aids. I'm talking about no mental immune system. They can't tell real from fake. And she's saying this is a problem. The public has MAIDs. But I'm saying it's by design. And so what they're saying here is they want the public, I think between the lines, they want the public to demand a mental vaccination, mental masking, mind vaxing. Basically censorship. See, censorship is mind vaccination. If you agree with it, if you say, hey, I'm going to self censorship, you could say. Like, if I'm going to self censor and I'm not going to say fake anymore, I'm not going to say flat earth, I'm not going to say any of these things that they don't want us to say, well, then, yeah, I have taken the mind vax. I'm holding back. If I'm not going to say, oh, that's fake and those are dead, those are fake dead babies, if I hold back and I don't say it because I don't want to hurt people's feelings, because I don't want to flood the internet with, quote, misinformation or whatever, then yeah, sure, I have vaxxed my mind, or I have masked my mind. And I don't wear a mind mask. I just say whatever. Just cough it out there. Mind influenza. Mind flu. You're a social media influencer. They use that word, but it's like influenza, like influence. And this is right out of, if you look at the cover, let's go revisit this. Economist, 2017, The New Shape. Think about that. The new shape, the novel shape, the new shape of Chinese power. Now, this is really a fascinating cover. No, it's called China, the Sharp Power cover. Sharp Power, and on the cover it has what looks like a big COVID ball. It literally looks like a COVID ball, but it's not entirely painted red because it's the globe. And this is kind of interesting because when the COVID ball was first shown to us, I pointed out that it looks like a globe with a bunch of mushroom clouds all over it, but painted red. But if you look at this cover, you've got a COVID ball, but it's the globe. It's just that it's only red where China is. But if you were to imagine this whole thing turning red, well then yeah, you would have the Chinese power, the Chinese red covering the entire ball. Now, the new shape of Chinese influence, the novel corona, the Chinese flu, influenza. So I'm saying Chinese influenza, the novel Chinese influenza, sharp power. And if you look at the utility of this in installing this form of collectivist power, and that's pretty much what this whole thing was about, centralizing power. We say communism very loosely here, but we're basically talking about the destruction of private wealth, private property, increasing the disparity between the oligarch technocrats and the people at the bottom. Yeah, mission accomplished. We have felt the new shape of Chinese influence. Elephant Tusk says COVID ball is greater than pickleball. Yeah, I don't even know what pickleball is, but I know that Matthew Perry had said something about pickleball. There was something in the story about it. I'll have to look into it. In fact, we have some more information on the Matthew Perry story because I was thinking about how at the beginning of Friends, they're dancing in front of the fountain, and now he's drowning in the pool, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting because maybe it's some kind of reference to the impending coming 9/11 event, like a sea attack. Okay, continuing here. Let's get back on track. I wanted to hear what Kamala Harris talking about how basically, yes, the public is in danger now because of a flood of information. So speaking of the flood, and this is all part of the Aquarian age, it's not a literal flood, but it's the flood of information. And it's so much information that the truth is out there, but it's buried. And you have many agents out there whose sole purpose it is to bury the truth. Joined by Tyrone McCloskey says, join 13 minutes in, 2 straight days. What am I tapping into? It's today's Day of the Dead, by the way. And in 2 days, it'll be 11/3, which is Godzilla's birthday, and we have a lot more information about Godzilla. See, a few months ago, I had been talking about the crab, the kraken, Cancer, the submersible Titan, the Titanic, Abaddon, the destroyer, in the abyss. All of these various things referencing one thing, some destructive entity that's going to 9/11 us. That 9/11 was just the beginning, that the next thing is, 9/11 is actually foreshadowing it. We're talking about the fall of the West itself, like the sinking of the Titanic, the sinking of the towers, but that it's going to happen when this destroyer in the abyss rises, and it's all connected to this Kraken theme that has been huge since 2020. And the Kraken has been associated with what? The political right, Donald Trump, the election, and that date, 11/3, which again is Godzilla's 69th birthday. And the 69 is a symbol of Cancer, the crab, another Kraken symbol, which ties into the solstice ritual of the imploding Titan on its way down to the Titanic. And again, the sunken Titanic in the story correlates to the Twin Towers, which we can get back into. It's a conversation in and of itself, but it has to do with the role of meta scripter James Cameron, how he was at the Titanic on 9/11. His movie, The Titanic, foreshadowed 9/11 with its ship split in two, sinking separately. But my point of it is, the destroyer ties into Oppenheimer. It's all about the nuke, the thing that's going to happen, the sea-based attack, and I think it's going to be 11/3. If you look at the from the perspective of the quote MAGA extremists, 11/3 is the day their country was stolen from them. So if there's going to be a 9/11 attack by domestic violent extremists, I've been saying 11/3, and I think Godzilla, his birthday, and Godzilla is associated with the nuke. He's actually a byproduct of the nuclear testing, and he's always been a metaphor for that. So in other words, I'm looking at 11/3 as the day they release the Kraken, or Godzilla. Godzilla rising up from sub-level 33. And I will go watch the movie, but there's more about this Godzilla. We've been getting into the symbolism behind it. Here we go. Mechagodzilla in Godzilla vs. Kong was inspired by the Terminator. And see, we've been talking about the Terminator and the symbolism there, which has to do with a few things. One, this reoccurring storyline of the sun god's death at sunset at the Terminator line. The Terminator going back in time to stop the Savior, JC, like Jesus Christ. Another James Cameron film, by the way, Terminator, which features a nuking of the West Coast. There's a few layers here to this, but it's interesting that the Terminator was an inspiration for Mecha Godzilla. One of the biggest surprises of Godzilla vs. Kong, which was not really a surprise, was the entry of Mecha Godzilla. He mentioned how it had to be a Terminator regarding its appearance. Fascinatingly, Donald Trump has been referred to as I think they call him the Terminator, or the Trumpinator. On his last speech, I saw these Trumpinator graphics, I'll be back, and I'm like, that's kind of interesting. And again, Terminator, Judgment Day, it's all tied in there. But I'll be back, Donald Trump with one red eye, and I'm thinking, wait, again, it refers to the one eye symbolism of the Antichrist, whose name is, in Revelation 9:11, Abaddon or Abaddon. But we've connected Abaddon because Donald Trump has been characterized as a bad Don, a mafia Don, and he's intrinsically tied into this ongoing narrative about the Antichrist. So the name of the Antichrist, Abaddon, destroyer, it really does comport, especially if you look at him as the head of the MAGA extremism that's going to be blamed for this sea attack. Which, again, this isn't prophecy. This is analyzing predictive programming. We're just basically looking for spoilers. These are spoiler alerts for the plot twisted. For those of you who want to know what's coming. And but again, this is misinformation flood in the age of M.A.I.D.S, and I've been calling this out, that this is an intentionally engineered situation. So the public demands censorship, mind masks for everybody, compulsory mind vaccination. It's coming. We says the fall of the West is ongoing, not a single event. Yeah, I think the whole thing, the story of the fall of the West ties into the Tower of Babel. 1776. Look at the back of your dollar bill. It has 1776 on the pyramid. That was the year of America's founding. But in the Masonic year of light, it was 5776, which happens to be in inches the height of the Great Pyramid in Giza. So what does this mean? Well, America, Giza, the pyramid, 1776. There's a story here. In the Masonic Year of Light 1776, Nimrod begins to build the Tower of Babel. So it's even encoded there that America is Babylon. You can see this in the St. John the Divine Cathedral in New York. This America as Babylon is a reoccurring theme, but the Tower of Babel is symbolically being torn down. And it's over a period of time. It's not all at once. And I think the Titanic is part of this story. I mean, I say metascript because they tell these stories over generations, but I'm saying that it's probably about now, considering we just had the Pluto return. And again, we're talking about this Kraken symbolism, the beast from the sea from Revelation, this recurring theme. But again, the Kraken is released by who? Who's the one that releases the Kraken? It's Hades or Pluto. And America had its Pluto return, meaning we were back to the point where we were when this nation was founded in 2022. 2022. So I'm suggesting here that the Kraken is the thing that tears down the Tower of Babel. And that's what we're waiting on. The Kraken everything, splitting the atom. And it's about to happen if you look at the big story. All these repeated themes that we're just kind of inundated with. Yeah, it's not that they're bluffing. No, it's conditioning you to accept it as having been inevitable when it happens. This is all conditioning. They're not bluffing. They're not holding back. No, they're conditioning you to accept it when it goes down. I mean, look at the multi-generational predictive programming that went into 9/11, and there's programming for Donald Trump going back even further. Okay, I'm going through some comments here. J. Dig says the only Trident nuclear submarine base on the west coast is just west of Seattle. Yeah, and Trident, there's another connection to who? Hades, Pluto. There's much, much more. Diana South says, I miss information. Seems all we get is misinformation. I think they realized that the truth would get out there. They didn't have tight control. And instead of trying to censor everything, they just flood everything. They incentivize it. But they flood everything without any context. And that's why I say that we need this raft. You know, a group of penguins afloat on a body of water is called a raft. This is a sea. It's not a flood, it's a sea of irrelevance. By design, Brave New World. And it's like the mass mind is inebriated and it can't put anything together. It has all the facts, but it can't put them together in a way that can be articulated. It's incoherent. It's too subjective. We are reality fluid. And what I'm suggesting is that the more of us who aren't reality fluid, who remain objective about facts, who are skeptical in the truest sense, in the original sense, the sense of the Greek skeptics, Pyrrho and the whole thing of withholding judgment, not getting caught up in the news cycle. See, that's where people get lost. They get caught up in the news cycle. Oh, this is the news. I believe it. I react to it. It's like, well, I don't know if that's the news. I need more time to see what other facts come out or alleged facts. Imagine if you were just believing everything at face value, at screen value as it happens, and then you hear the story, oh no, Jussie Smollett just got lynched by some MAGAs. And all these celebrities came out. Even Alyssa Milano, she's like, yeah, the MAGA hat is the new Klan hood. Which is kind of funny because I said it as a joke that they were going to start saying that, and then she said it. And all these people are mourning Jussie Smollett because he was brutally killed, lynched, hanging from a tree, covered in bleach. All kinds of N words were said. And then 24 hours later, we find out the whole thing was a hoax. The whole thing, from start to finish, the whole thing was a hoax. But the damage was done. And the people who were predisposed to believe it, who wanted it to be true, yeah, they already jumped on it. They just assumed it was true. It's just atrocity propaganda, which is what we're subject to all the time. But what I'm saying is, the people who fell for it are just not skeptics. You're not a skeptic if you believe what you see on the news the day that they show it. That's another important point. You can say you believe it, but you don't know it. And to believe something on the first day it's reported, just because it's shocking, just because it has a high body count, is the opposite of skepticism. And they know this. They're like, hey, this is a bunch of bullshit. But we can shoehorn it into them, into their minds, if we just throw a bunch of bodies on it. Like here's a big pile of crap, but there's 40 dead babies on it. And people are like, oh my God, it's true. Let's emote. I mean, Ben Shapiro has just destroyed any shred of credibility he has. He's just an emotional, shrill warmonger and a hateful little troll. And that's because he doesn't vet information. He caught the mind virus and he went into fight or flight. He went into mind war. We are always hearing about space wars, which has been this recurring theme: Star Wars, space wars. And I've made these connections before about how outer space and inner space have been connected symbolically, like space junk, mind junk. Who's the leading purveyor, promulgator of mind junk and space junk? Elon Musk. Not a coincidence, because space is just a metaphor for controlling your minds. There's never going to be a war in space like in science fiction. It's always going to be in your mind. And people like Shapiro, assuming he's not acting, he believes all this stuff, and I think he does. I think he's that insulated. They are at war in their own minds. It's the opposite of quiescence and peace. And the original skeptics, again, I'm referring to the Greek skeptic tradition of, you know, here we go. Going back to Pyrrhonism, Pyrrho is credited with being the first Greek skeptic and founder, but the approach was not merely to determine what is noble, but it was a stable philosophical posture that they claimed led to happiness. The state of mind achieved by the skeptic, ataraxia, implies a life free of concern or worry for that which doesn't truly matter. So, skepticism in this sense means suspending judgment before you agree to believe, and the refusal to agree without knowledge places one in a different world than those who are in this world of misinformation, propaganda, lies, and superstition, and egregious atrocity porn. So this is a philosophy that's meant to lead to a state of knowingness. And something that I think is notable here is you can contrast it right now. Contrast the state of mind of the people who don't believe what they see with the auto believers, this worry filled doom addiction, coping with hopium, compulsively doom scrolling. So, the first issue of the IPS Insider, the theme is going to be auto hoaxers as pyromaniacs on the world stage. Dwayne Garrett says the hive mind is very malleable and groupthink is feeble. Exactly. Great point there. And the hive mind, when they activate it in this way, it's all fight or flight. It's hypersensitive to threats. It's goaded into even existing based on some, like for example, in the movie The Village, their whole community was based on the existence of these wicked monsters out in the woods. And it turned them into this hive mind. Whenever they heard the sirens or whenever the alerts were rang, they would all just go into panic mode and run and hide in the basements. They've been traumatized. And that's what I would suggest. I would say that we're living in a society that's been traumatized through multi-generational agitprop. And it's interesting to note too how the media has intermittent reward and it's punishment. It's in a number of ways. And I describe it as a highly narcissistic construct because of the dynamics between the viewer and the TV, and not just the content, but the relationship itself, the relationship dynamic. It's very Kafkaesque, how it's this assumed authority, but that it becomes the center of everybody's life, and it is the source of terror, but it's also the source of relief, of order. That you're looking for information because they confuse you, and then they eventually provide you with that information. When people are panicking, when they can't figure things out, really what they're waiting for is information. So they simultaneously terrorize you, and then they're also the savior, which is Stockholm syndrome, terrorist savior. And of course, I believe that is 100% by design. And then, the news is so terrible, but then you just change the channel. You can go from being horrified to laughing because now everything is just happy in TV land. It's very bipolar. Going through some comments. 777 says Little Benny is just obeying his orders. Yeah, nothing new there. Again, I think Ben Shapiro is. I'm not sure how many of these people are really authentic, but if if I had to say my true feelings about this, I would say he's the byproduct of like Sean Hannity and Ann Coulter. I don't know if they literally did it or he's born in a vat like Kyle Rittenhouse and Greta Thunberg, but it's just like there's nothing new there. He's a byproduct of the Fox News echo chamber, but he's a perfect amalgamation of these two. It's like he's a creation. He's a construct. Ben Shapiro is a construct. All of his ideas, the bullet points, if you were to go down everything that he says, it's tailor made to reach certain audiences. Like, I don't think he's authentic. Okay, let us continue here. We're going through the notes of the day. Uh, Ultimatum to Israel, 3 p.m. local time, Friday, November the 3rd, Kraken Day, 113. Hezbollah in Lebanon has issued what many people believe is an ultimatum to Israel: stop the war by 3 p.m. on Friday the 3rd. Ominous numbers. This comes from Hal Turner. Again, Hal Turner, probably a Fed, but the name I think is definitely designed to call back to the Turner Diaries. Major league agitator there. Okay, now here's President Joe Biden talking about putting, quote, guardrails on artificial intelligence. Guardrails. There's so many comments here about Ben Shapiro that I cannot read out loud. Paulie says Ben Shapiro was birthed from a lagoon of demon blank. Okay, this is President Biden puts guardrails on artificial intelligence.
CNN's Stefano Pozzebon explains.
Hundreds of thousands of migrants entering the US are from Venezuela. But this country's economy
Okay, I'm going to scroll down here. This is the part I was looking for here. Okay, so here is Joe Biden. Apparently he saw some AI video of himself and he couldn't tell it wasn't him. And that's a problem.
President Biden unveiled an executive order to address concerns over safety. Executive orders are signed into law by the president, bypassing congressional approval, but they're far less powerful than congressional laws because they can be challenged in court and canceled by future presidents. Let's turn to CNN's Mike Valerio to learn more about what this order contains.
So today matters because this is the first set of federal regulations governing artificial intelligence that have been made, but there are...
This is insane. I mean, what we're really talking about here, I don't even think it's artificial intelligence. They're playing upon public misconceptions, but it's a leveler of the playing field. It's a labor-saving device, sure. But they're overstating the threat because the ability to fake news is the thing they want to monopolize. The mass media has to have a monopoly on creating the reality in our internalized version of the world. And now they have to compete. And they're getting in front of this and making it clear that it won't be safe for there to be competition. You know, they want to watermark stuff so you know if it's AI because the public can't tell if it's real or not. And that is a real thing. I'm not being facetious when I say the public has MAIDs. That they do have a mental immune system disorder. They can't process these things as real or fake. It's real because their eyes are glued to the screen, and it may as well be a sensory apparatus. They do live in an augmented virtual reality. And when I say they, I mean 99.9% of the population who haven't figured this out, who probably never will.
Still huge challenges ahead.
Artificial intelligence technology is advancing rapidly, and the federal government is scrambling to keep up.
I'm about to sign an executive order that is the most significant action any government anywhere in the world has ever taken on AI safety, security, and trust.
The White House unveiling a sweeping new executive order Monday aimed at mitigating the risks of AI.
Now, let me point this out too. AI 1919. Pearl Harbor was Operation AI. September 11th, 19 hijackers. 19 years later, COVID-19. And there's a lot of this I see here. A lot of 19 is a sort of like seemingly a code that refers to globally transformative psyops. And it's interesting here that you have AI as another one of these. But again, this is a problem, reaction, solution thing. Nobody really is asking for this, but they're setting the stage because they don't want to be losing control over their reality monopoly. P. Trippa says, is this really our World War III, or did it already happen after 9/11? Good question. I would say World War III started on 3/11/2020, which was the title of a live stream the Monday before. Before that Wednesday, we had said, does World War III start on Wednesday? And that's because 3/11 we had figured is going to be the date that World War III starts in whatever form it is, Ground Zero Seattle, which we were correct about. But it was the thing that got us all on the same sheet. We all got the upgrade or the download. For the people who are anti-vaxxers, it's like, you know what, you really think they just want to injure or kill a segment of the population when their whole thing here is brainwashing 7 billion simultaneously? What they have done is they have ensured unanimous, ubiquitous belief in the pandemic construct and in, of course, everything that we see here. The need they've created for censorship, the demand, the public demand, the acquiescence. Project Hondarod says, does NASA get a watermark so people know it's real? And yeah, that's a good question. Before NASA did their Artemis mission last summer, they were showing an animation of its trip around the moon. And they had to put on their animation. And I'm thinking, why do they have to label this animation? And then I realized because the real thing looks exactly like their animations, and they didn't want people to think they had already done it. That tells you how bad things are. Anyway, they're going to put guardrails on artificial
While also
intelligence.
harnessing its potential.
To realize the promise of AI and avoid the risk, we need to govern this technology.
According to the Biden administration, the order will require all AI developers to share results of their.
Now, we were speaking about Terminator and James Cameron. Terminator, Skynet, this global AI, which connects to HAL 9000. It's a reoccurring theme here that has to do with this centralized control of, well, all governments handed over to some kind of artificial intelligence, this new God construct that the public is being prepared to accept. And there's a David Bowie song, Savior Machine, about handing over controls of government from President Joe to the Savior Machine. I mean, really, not really inconsistent from everything else from David Bowie. It's all predictive programming. He's been very much connected to the whole space program, Space Oddity, Space Odyssey. But anyway, Skynet, Global AI Alliance, Gaia from the World Economic Forum. The WEF 666 has this global AI thing. Again, GAIA, Gaia. And Gaia, or yeah, this is like the name of the GAIA, the name of the goddess, like the consciousness of the globe, personification of the earth, which is kind of fascinating too, because James Cameron's series Avatar are based on Pandora, which has sentience. In fact, the second Avatar movie is about how they find out that the earth was awake. It was alive, but we killed it. So we have to go take over this moon now, and it's alive, and its people are its indigenous are fighting off the Marines from the earth. I mean, it's just Dances with Wolves crossed with Fern Gully, but the main part of it is the people who are in touch with nature can communicate with the world intelligence. And this is being introduced again as Gaia, the goddess name, goddess of the earth, but the World Economic Forum is tying it into artificial intelligence as this global network of everybody. Okay, listen to these lyrics. This is from David Bowie's Savior Machine. President Joe once had a dream. The world held his hand, gave their pledge, so he sold them his scheme for a savior machine. Its logic stopped war, it gave them food. How they adored it and cried in its boredom. Anyway, kind of interesting here that we have Joe Biden and now we're moving to the stage. And I thought this was the case when I saw him and the other world leaders at NATO bowing before that digital obelisk. And I had said then, I was like, I'm pretty sure this digital obelisk at NATO replaces the Georgia Guidestones. It has the same message, bunch of climate change garbage, but it's digital and it ties the whole world in. It's not just there in Georgia. And then sure enough, they blew up the Guidestones the next year. Okay, Mapman Flood. This is great. Now, if you want to check any of these videos that I'm playing or any of these links go to minds.com/infinite plane society. This is from We Seek, We Find. And this is a compilation of what would be considered, I guess, predictive programming for Matthew Perry's hot tub death.
Chandler M. Bing. It's not just an M. Your middle name is Muriel.
It is a family name.
Okay, now, Muriel is a girl's name meaning star of the sea, sparking, shining sea. Again, I'm just scrolling through. This is a 4-minute video here.
I don't know, but Donald Trump wants his blue blazer black. What? Blue blazer back. He wants...
Anyway, I'm not going to play it all. I'm going to put a link, but what I'm mostly finding here is that there's quite a lot here with Chandler in tubs. It's kind of a thing.
All right, this isn't so bad. I like the flowery smell, which is okay because I've got my boat.
Elephant Tusk says Chandler is a reference to child handler. Rachel Chandler, that is. Right. I've seen some fascinating threads here. If you go down with the Batman stuff, which seemingly lots of it seems to connect to Trump weirdly. And his birthday is April 8th, which is the day of the total solar eclipse. This upcoming solar eclipse. And I think he died on a lunar eclipse. And speaking of, this was like a Halloween thing. There's been a number of stabby stories. A lot of people getting knifed. And then you had that hockey player getting his throat slashed. Like there was a lot of stabby stuff going on in the last couple of days, which we'll look into. Anyway, a link's there. We Seek, We Find. A lot of interesting leads there. Basically, at a very minimum, it's probably a fake staged death. How Shin Godzilla reframed the traumatic events of 3/11. This is posted by Violet. Let's take a look here. Like the original Godzilla, we're talking about this new one. This one from 2016 marked a turning point in Japan's understanding of nuclear power. So the original 3/11 was Fukushima. And again, just another example of Godzilla, whose debut in 1954 is conceived as a metaphor for nuclear weapons after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And this is another thing too. We just had the summer of Barbieheimer. And Barbie is the Whore of Babylon. Oppenheimer, the movie about the destroyer, I had correlated in a few different ways. You can kind of see how they put these movies out concurrently for a reason. This is some Babylon and the Beast stuff. And when Maui had that fire, and they followed it up with a soil tackifier that turned the burned areas pink, that fire, the lasers, it could have been Godzilla's laser eyes for the purposes of the story. It represents that dynamic of Babylon and the Beast, and it's all tied into these tests that happened out on the islands. We talked about Bikini Atoll and the bombshell being the first connection between the goddess and the bomb. But anyway, what I'm pointing out here is that this summer we had all this buildup with this Oppenheimer movie and the bomb and then this Barbie stuff all at the same time. And I think what we're seeing is the beast, the bomb being symbolized by the beast, and Godzilla is just another metaphor for the beast of the sea. Again, this is all a reference to the coming sea-based attack. And we were talking about this because last year they were doing a lot of drills in Seattle or simulations for a tsunami in Seattle that would create 42-foot waves. I mean, this is a story that has been building for some time. Again, Seattle's hockey team, the Seattle Kraken, 32nd NHL team. The Kraken's trailer, 1 minute 13 seconds, another 113 reference, Godzilla's birthday, the date of the One World Trade Tower. It's all really interesting. And one more thing, the One World Trade Tower and the Tower of Babylon, we were talking about that being the symbol, the One World Tower. And it's 1,776 feet high. It's not just because of America and America's founding, it's because that's the Tower of Babel's founding, of the beginning of its creation, 1776 Annu Lucius. But the Tower of Babel, 11.3, Godzilla, 11.3. The connection here, of course, it's at ground zero. It references the Kraken that's going to take down the Tower of Babel. That's the symbolism we've been seeing. When you see the Seattle Kraken, the big squid creature hugging the Space Needle, same story, same symbol. The Space Needle, obelisk, the One World Trade Tower, it's all the same symbol. It represents, in many ways, man's hubris, Nimrod, going against God, building a tower from earth into the heavens. And when we stepped on the moon, the Apollo mission, July 20th, 1969, that was man's incursion into God's turf. So the space program itself is like the Tower of Babel in that sense. One man, all mankind, one giant leap for all mankind. It's the universal thing. And interestingly, on the 50th anniversary of this thing, or on the, which anniversary was it? It was, when did Bezos go up? Was it 2021? So Jeff Bezos, and this is not even real space, he went 50 miles up. But he goes 50 miles up, technically it's space, but he launches at 9:11 a.m. So what does that mean? On the anniversary of Apollo, he launches at 9:11 a.m. So you have a couple of references here. Yep, July 20th, 2021, liftoff at 9:11. And his rocket does look like the phallic rocket of Dr. Evil. This has been widely ripped on by the media. Jeff Bezos' rocket looks like the dong rocket of Dr. Evil. Not to mention, Dr. Evil lives in the Space Needle in Seattle. And one more thing, since we're just kind of on this topic, Bezos and the symbolism here, Jeff Bezos is literally building a Tower of Babylon. You can find this if you take a look at the new headquarters. Internet weighs in on Amazon's Helix Tower. And the debate has largely been, is it the Tower of Babel or is it the poo emoji? Kind of the same shape, but basically, yes, he is literally building the Tower of Babel. And there's more to it. If you look into or look at Bezos and Dr. Evil, they laugh the same by design. Bezos adopted that laugh. Dr. Evil has a scar emphasizing one eye. Jeff Bezos, for the longest time, had one eye heavily emphasized in all of his pictures, which, I just thought it's an interesting characteristic because with his money, any kind of physical change cosmetically that could be done, he would get it done. So why did it always appear that he seemed to be slightly winking? Well, it's more of this antichristy type symbolism, sure. That's a big part of it, but there's another element to it. If he's the world stage representative of Nimrod, the tower builder, builds the Tower of Babel, builds the first civilization after the flood. This is all very interesting considering he's the richest man on earth. He has the most money. And going back to the dollar bill, the Great Pyramid of Giza, 5,776 inches, 1776, back of the bill. What's on the top of that pyramid? the one eye, the mono eye. So this is the richest man in the world, representing the builder of the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel on your bill has one eye. Money, or mono eye. And this guy has the most money in the world. There's some kind of connection here. But the storytelling is deep. Richard Branson had actually launched 9 days prior on 7/11/2021, the 42nd anniversary of Skylab falling down to Earth. He launched into space in a space plane carried up by the White Knight 2. Now, I have a few ideas about this. Like, I happen to think 1776, Declaration of Independence, founding of the Illuminati. There's something here. And it all does tie into the date, though, 113, the date that the One World Trade Tower opened. And these dates are not arbitrary. The Pentagon's construction began on 9/11, 1941. Not a coincidence. These are all purposefully chosen dates. If you just got here, it's Day of the Dead 2023. You to wear a mind mask. Especially those of you who are mentally healthy. Do you remember how it was in 2020? Those of you who are healthy super spreaders because you can spread it to the immunocompromised. So the healthy are a threat to the ill. Now, that's physical health, physically ill. Now they're saying that the mentally healthy are a threat to the mentally ill. And you can point to characters like Robert Card, the guy who just shot up 3 places there in Maine, the bowling alley shooter, bowling for Lewiston, totally a hoax. But anyway, he was in a bubble on Twitter, radicalized by Elon Musk and right-wingers to go do this bad thing. He became a MAGA extremist. That's kind of the story here, is that the mentally ill are being victimized by mind virus super spreaders. So you may not be symptomatic of any mental illness, but you carry the mind viruses that can infect people who are mentally ill. So they've made this connection. These are the thought crimes. And they're showing the public what happens if we don't have the internet. I guess they're going to do something very similar. Like they want the internet counterpart to a lockdown and quarantine. And again, mind vaxing and mind masking. Lean Dion says Bezos and the Kraken on the Inside Job cartoon. Yeah, great clip there. Inside Job, 9/11 reference. So there's another 9/11 reference to Bezos. We're talking about how he launched at 9:11 a.m. And he's on a mega yacht on the show called Inside Job. And this mega yacht, I believe, is a symbol of the Titanic, which is a symbol of the Tower of Babel or the West. It's all the same symbol. So the richest man in the world on a mega yacht, and he symbolizes Nimrod in this narrative, then yeah, the boat is very symbolic here. So in this show called Inside Job, a kraken pulls him under. A kraken takes Bezos down in his mega yacht. Think about that. That is just too perfect. And it goes even deeper, because not only is the show a 9/11 reference, and he launched at 9/11, and his ship with him on it gets taken down by a kraken, but it was season 1, episode 6. 1/6, January 6th, released the Kraken, insurrection. I'll play a short clip here.
I'm about to collect on my yacht insurance policy.
Hey, has anyone seen Jeff Bezos?
Is the fight over, guys? This is why I don't allow bathroom breaks!
Now, this was at the same time that Bezos was out there on his mega yacht flexing, and I said, this is proof here. This is evidence that Jeff Bezos is Nimrod, because Nimrod was flaunting the will of God by unifying man with one language and building the tower to take them from earth into the heaven. He was like, he's going to do his own thing. Bezos has been to space. He has seen the earth. He has seen the damage that he has done to it with his capitalism and all his products. So he knows that Globe is mad, and Globe is the God construct. And yet he's like, I don't care what Globe thinks. I'm going to get a big, giant mega yacht. So he is baiting Globe to take him down, just like Nimrod baiting God to take down his tower. It's the hubris, it's the arrogance, the unsinkable ship, too big to fail. It's all tied in because this is all symbolic. He's the richest man in the world. It's all symbolic of the West. And the West is going to be hit by the Kraken. Nicotrama says, if they take this Tim and Les down, then there's no more point on the internet other than to log into your bank to pay bills. Well, the IPS Insiders first edition will be out here in about a week, IPS Insider. And here it's going to be a freemium version, so I can have it rapidly disseminated by our press pass carriers. Minimum friction, we want wide distribution, and I think there'll be a high turnover. Anybody gets the free version is probably going to get the full version. And you'll see why when I have it out there in print, which will be soon. And every single article is going to have a QR code link to download the content associated with it. Podcasts, articles, art, PDFs, which means that it exists as a hybrid. It's Meetverse and Metaverse, but it also, in a way, it's independent. And I've been talking about this concept of the parallel media, where we cease to need to breathe their air. And when our paper is in circulation, and it is a record of everything that we are doing, what we've done, everything that we're about, and it can be accessed both in a digital format with a scan or just read there in analog, I think it's pretty much unbeatable, and it can exist whatever they do to the internet. Elephant Tusk says, remember at the end of Fahrenheit 451 when the people actually became the books? I've heard that expression, first they burn books, then they burn people. But I have not actually read that. I might have to. In fact, I'm going to read it. I'll read it, or I'll grab the audiobook and I'll check it out because it's obviously relevant. You've all seen that meme, right? Where it's like, you are here. And it's like 1984, Fahrenheit 451, Brave New World. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, I found it. You are here. 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451. I'm sure there's some gems in there. And yes, we are living through a digital book burning. And if you were to take all of the books, all the digital books that have been burned, all the videos, all the servers, all that content created by people, by real human beings. Think about this too. This is why it's such a travesty. Future anthropologists are not going to like what they're seeing. They're going to realize they're gaping holes in what we could be studying, because what's going to happen is they're going to look back and see that a lot of the interactions between the multitudes when they became capable of speaking to each other, it'd be like if suddenly mankind woke up telepathic and we could all communicate to each other instantaneously. Obviously, that kind of a evolutionary change would be notable. Like, how do we interact? How do we define boundaries? How do we coexist? It'd be an interesting dialogue and conversation to see how humanity organizes itself with this brand new set of circumstances, this new situation. And we've had that with the internet. We've had this new curveball thrown at us, and we've all had to respond. But what they've done is they've deleted the way that many people have adapted to it. They've deleted organic culture creation, conversations, all this stuff. And if you were to put all the stuff that they destroyed into book format and put it in a library, how big would that be? How many stories tall? And they brag about it. In fact, I remember YouTube's CEO was bragging. I think they said they deleted 500 billion comments. Like evil villain laugh. Yeah, here it is. I got to find the link. They were bragging about it, just so wicked. Yeah, we deleted 500 billion conversations. But it's because they have a reality monopoly. It's not just about money. It's a reality monopoly. It's much deeper than just money. Lean Dion says, Fahrenheit 451 has news in the future presented as live stream with viewers commenting and emoting support for the state. Now, speaking of Fahrenheit 451, I said the first issue of the Insider's theme is auto hoaxers as pyromaniacs, kind of a play on words, first skeptic, but also pyro, like pyromaniacs, because we are, in many ways, what we're doing is, inciting. The insider means to spread an idea. But you could also look at it as kind of a symbolic burning, like burn down, build back better. And then there's also insight, like inner sight, reflection, cognition. And the symbol of the torch has always been a symbol of, the secret traditions, underground knowledge, the hidden wisdom passed down. My point being, the IPS Insider has a number of different meanings attached to the name, and it's because we are taking the information that's capstone level intel they keep it this way in order to maintain the disparity between those in the know and the believers. The knowers control the believers in this world. It's the lie world order. And I think that's how it's always been. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's how it's always been. But my point of it is, we didn't have to sign any blood oaths or sign any NDAs or anything like that. We didn't have to commit ourselves in order to get this information. We're not insiders like they are, but we have insider information. So another term, another word that rhymes, insider is INSIDER. Going through some comments, joined by a few other people. We got 64 people in YouTube. And the title of today's live stream, and this has to do with what Kamala Harris has said and what Biden is doing with the guardrailing of AI and regulating it. Misinformation flood in the age of M.A.I.D.S. But most of the world stage infrastructure cannot stand scrutiny. These lies are easy to debunk, but they're very persistent and the truth gets drowned out. So what we're doing here as we move forward, I think, is somewhat analogous to the Jesuit orders. One of their famous slogans, set the world on fire, one of their missions. And this is a reference to Ignatius Loyola. Go forth and set the world aflame. Go forth and set the world on fire. And I think this is kind of what the idea of the insider is. It's about setting the world stage on fire, in the sense that now you have something that they cannot censor because it's not only on their controlled platforms, but it's literally in the meatverse. A tabloid that offers challenges to the media itself. See, most media is presenting a version of the world. Alternative media is regurgitating and putting their own twists on that, their own spins. But who is studying the media itself or the mediation process? Who's reporting on the mediation? Nobody. Nobody. I mean, sometimes, occasionally, like Alex Jones did report on the coverage of Sandy Hook in a way that got him in trouble. They're not allowed to cover the mediation process itself, but we can. That's actually what we do here. So the IPS Insider isn't regurgitating news. It's not alt news, because we know the news isn't news. It's much more than that. All right, let's continue on the notes. Again, November the 3rd is a date to watch. I think that would be the day to expect a white nationalist, domestic violent extremist attack on Seattle. VR6 has joined us. If you want to call in, by the way, phones are now open. It's 505-349-0420. Elon Musk tweeted, "The real battle is between the extinctionists and the humanists. Once you see it, you can't unsee it." My response? No, it's between real and fake. You are on Team Fake. Do you remember I've been talking about Matt Gaetz for some time? About how Matt Gaetz is 5'7" on paper, but on photo, he's 6'7". That Matt Gaetz is taller than everybody around him in every single picture. He's taller than Donald Trump and Eric Trump, but on paper, he's like a foot shorter. And I figured he's either got a short photographer, and it's an angle thing, or he's photoshopping it to make himself appear taller. Well, lately, this has been the subject of criticism directed at DeSantis, who is wearing heels inside of his boots. He's got these lifts, and he's been trying to conceal this fact that he's like 5'6", 5'7", but he presents himself as 5'11". And this video that came out a couple of days ago shows him walking, and it does look like somebody who's not used to walking in heels. It's a very awkward walk. There's no other way to explain it other than this guy's on his tippy toes.
Power, got Central Florida Electric, and at our Hermes home we had.
I'm just saying, this is exactly what Matt Gaetz is doing as well. They all do it. Lying about the height. But this is the end of Ron DeSantis. I thought the pudding fingers would do it, but no, this is it. The fact that he is being called out on it relentlessly, he can't hide from it. It's childish, but that's politics today. Former Trump administration Christian nationalist William Wolf warns we're getting close to the point now. Now, the point is the turning point in the Turner Diaries, where the Christians will have to heed the call to arms.
The enemy is pressed upon us. If we fail to heed the call to arms, then we are acting as cowards.
Cowards. Okay, well, we're getting to the point where Christians will need to heed the call to arms. Police shut down road for 33 hours as body is found, only to find it's an overused sex doll. Interesting. Makes me wonder, though, we've been talking about psyops and atrocity propaganda, and a number of people went into these various serial killer stories. Like, why should we believe these are real? Maybe they want us to believe that this is how men are, and this is how society is. It's so sexist that men are just objectifying women to the point where they just kill them and use them as objects and throw them in dumpsters, and they kill hundreds of some of these serial killer stories, like Henry Lee Lucas, are later debunked. I'm just saying, this could have been maybe a psyop that they weren't supposed to actually go touch the thing, but they actually shut down a road for a body. But I'm wondering, like, whenever they do these serial killers and they bring bodies out, are we looking at atrocity propaganda and dummies? I'm going to have to go back and look. I mean, some of these stories are too sensational to believe, and they always have a political agenda attached to them. Like the Jeffrey Dahmer one even had a strong tie-in to racial politics and disparities in police protection, how he knew he could get away with it because of who he was targeting as victims. It just seemed like, I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to look into it. I no longer believe that there are serial killers prowling around my streets. It's one less thing to be afraid of. Diana South says, who determined if the doll was used versus overused? Right, how many professional opinions would that require? Like, overused. What does overused look like? You'd have to contact the manufacturer. Ollie Goering says, world average male height is 5'6" to 5'9". Right. It's just another one of these nonsensical, puerile, lowbrow political soap opera things that people get all happy about. Like, oh, Trump's taller than him, so he's better. Yeah, okay. Okay, let's continue. There's so much going on here. Kanye West explains why celebrities can't stand with Palestine. This was sent to me by Mr. Trustworthy, who says, Third Reich Kanye returns. This should be good. Eddie F says, do you think the Vietnam War was fake just like Ukraine and Gaza? Interesting question. And we have to say what we mean when we say fake. It's very important. Like, some people say, oh, false flag. A false flag made it happen and then it became real and then it was kinetic. And it's like, I don't know. Not really sure. I mean, we're in a village and it's an information war. Do you think the information war started after Vietnam? We know it started when they convinced everybody that nukes were real. when you take some of these white pills and you realize what is fake, the fakeability scale goes up. And the scale at which they can fake things is also something that just shoots through the roof. Let me play this clip here. This is Kanye West, and he's going to explain why celebrities can't stand with Palestine.
So every celebrity,
Go ahead.
every celebrity has Jewish people in their contract. This is not hate speech. This is the truth. And these people, if you say anything out of the line with the agenda, then your career could be over.
Listen,
So
I hear you. You've made that point.
Cutting off my point.
Because the
I love
point
you,
is
sir.
because
why
it's
do you keep why?
Yeah,
Yo, sir,
here's why.
Don't cut me off, sir. Respect my
I've
point.
listened to it. You've made it several times.
No, I'm not finished, sir.
I understand,
Look,
but
I'm
you've
not
said
finished,
it
sir.
several times,
I'm not
and
finished,
it is
sir.
an
But my
ugly
people haven't
thought.
heard me. My people, they
People
need
have
to
heard
hear.
you.
They need to hear me.
All right, Bianca iCensor is not doing her job. She's supposed to be keeping him distracted. You notice that he went quiet when someone named Sensori got into his life.
Saying out loud what the truth is. There's a bunch of people in Hollywood that are actors, that play basketball, that play sports, that are in music, that know what I'm saying, that feel what I'm saying, and they're happy that I'm saying what I'm saying. It's not a contract.
All right, interesting points. Interesting points. Grangerman says Tucker Carlson admitted to being an auto hoaxer on the Theo Von show yesterday. Well, I've noticed that a number of people like Candace Owen, for example, and a few others on the right and Laura Loomer have had to come to terms with this, saying we can no longer accept it as real. Even Tim Pool, like, well, we have to vet this information. It's like, wait a minute, now you're going to start vetting? But they're only going to do it selectively. Oh, we're only going to question, like, you get people who, like, they believe all the atrocities committed by Israel are real, but the ones committed by Hamas, yeah, that's propaganda. Then you have others who are like, no, the ones committed against Hamas, that's all fake, but the ones against Israel, that's real. Okay, well, which is it? You can't have it both ways. Either they're all real or they're all fake. And if you look at the available evidence and you subtract what can't be verified, you're left with a bunch of fake dead kids are under attack. It's like there's a fake dead kid genocide. Apparently, fake dead kids' lives don't matter because they're just killing off fake dead kids everywhere. And they have been doing this for such a long time. Soon we're going to run out of fake dead kids. Lean Dion says Tucker is not an auto hoaxer. No, he's not. Not even close. Tucker is a guard railer. He is a safe establishment conspiracy theorist. He'll talk about UFOs and JFK. What really happened? I'm like, oh, come on. It's not even kindergarten level. But he's a world stager. And if you're a conspiracy theorist, in all likelihood, if you follow anybody even close to Tucker, anybody who treats Tucker as an authority or the way to reach big audiences, if you're an Alex Jones head, you're on the political horseshoe. You really are. You're on that continuum. What happens is you see it's fake, you turn your back on it, and you start walking away. And if you lean left, you become woke and you get re-engaged, but at a deeper level. If you lean right or anti-government, you will lean towards red pills, and that turns you into the political horseshoe. Well, now you're against the wokes. Red pill's against woke. Woke is against red pill. It's like you guys are taking the same exact stuff. You're taking a stronger version of the blue pill. Salty Siren says, I'm embarrassed to be on Earth. Yeah, we are embarrassed earthers. If you have any sense of shame, you're an embarrassed earther. That's what I am. Elephant Tusk says, Tim, can you explain celebrities like Ellen DeGeneres and David Spade signaling to each other about Q back on Twitter in 2020? You know what? This is the thing about Q. You can't just dismiss it and say, you guys don't know what you're talking about, because that's gaslighting. Because the fact of it is, they are going off of clues. They're going off of actual narratives. They're actually going off of information that forms cohesive storylines. I don't know what to make of all of that. It's possible that all these people who are part of it, like Ellen DeGeneres or Tom Hanks, they seem to be wearing ankle bracelets. It could be that Q is a script. And this has been one of my theories because everything about Q ties to the Kennedys. Everything about the Kennedys ties into Stanley Kubrick. So you have that connection right there. The Kubrick, Kennedy, Metascript connection would involve Q. And the story isn't all that new anyway. This bloodline of Christ to the Kennedys isn't all that new. The recycling of a whole bunch of old conspiracies, repackaging it, blood libel, and just making it about Democrats, it's very engineered. So it wouldn't surprise me if all of these various actors and actresses were part of the psyop. Let's make it seem like. I mean, why else would these people be like emoji? Some of their, well, I don't know, this is the hard part about it too. You have to remember a lot of the information that would lead you to think things happens to be manufactured. For example, there is this image circulating of Ellen DeGeneres on Instagram where she posts a couple of pizza emojis and there's these two children on a boat. So QAnoners are like, oh, there's proof. She's signaling she's about to eat these children. Well, it turns out that the photo was with her nephew and her niece, and the comment with the pizza emojis was fake. So there's a lot of fake information as well. But what I'm saying is it's far more likely that it's a highly sophisticated psyop that involved both sides. It's more likely that's true than the essential narrative is true. I mean, how many years has it been since the first Q drop? We just had the 6th anniversary. Lean Dion says the Hollywood writer strike is over and then we get Maine. Right? Well, their strike was about not getting replaced by AI. Not getting replaced as writers, as actors, as extras. It's like that's going to happen eventually. They're fighting, they're clinging to it. They're no longer going to be special because they can be replicated. And I'm wondering, there's no strike with the Government Actors Guild, the crisis actors, the people who write those scripts. Like, they don't have any protections. Honestly, I feel bad for them. There are no protections for crisis actors should they get phased out and replaced with totally fake CGI characters. There'll be a lot of out of work. Maybe one of these out of work crisis actors with an axe to grind will finally become the whistleblower that we need. Let's just put it out there. If you're a disgruntled GAG, Government Actors Guild, if you're a disgruntled crisis actor and you want to just tell us how it all works behind the scenes, we are all ears and we will set up a GoFundMe because that's how you pay crisis actors. Well, left-wing crisis actors. Right-wing crisis actors like Daniel Penny, they get paid through Give, Send, Go. Thank you, Nicotramus. We at IPS appreciate the support. He says, have a 6-pack on me. Thanks for the show tonight. Oh yeah, we are definitely doing this nightly. And I do plan on bringing in more elements to this as we move forward. It's been kind of rocky these first couple of months as far as the various things, but if one project gets stalled, we move on to another. The tabloid thing is finally happening. Autohoaxology 101, the textbook is out and in circulation. I made 2 different trips to the post office today, and a lot of you got emails today with tracking numbers, and more to come. Eddie F. says, I doubt scriptwriters are responsible for the fake events. Yeah, there is some overlap with Hollywood and the psyops, especially if you look at this from the Metascript perspective. Just look at people like Ellen Moore, Tom Clancy. Then there's various directors we could point out. James Cameron we were talking about. Writers like Stephen King. Stephen King's The Shining contains copious predictive programming for 9/11. The sequel, Doctor Sleep, is about a baby who predicts 9/11. Like, the scriptwriters are definitely hugely responsible for the fake, well, the presentation. They are the writers. The same people that write your news are making your movies. There is no meaningful distinction between your infotainment news and Hollywood. If you want to know what's going to happen next year in the world, you don't need to watch the news. Watch Netflix. Get a gas mask. Get ready for Fallout. Eddie F. says you should have Fakeologist on and Les Luthor. Okay, I will reach out to them. Les Luthor is cutting edge, cutting fringe. Illusion warfare is his term. Smart move too, because the term psyop has been appropriated. When Musk started using it, I was like, oh nah, nope, nope. If Musk is calling things a psyop, they are muddying the waters. You could call it a hoax, but that doesn't quite do it because they call you a hoaxer, which makes no sense. I'm like, hey, you guys are committing a hoax. Shut up, hoaxer. That would be like going to a magic show and calling out that it's fake or that it's, and explaining how it's done, and then they call you or accuse you of trying to trick everybody. It's like, it's a weird form of projection. It never made sense that we're the hoaxers. So you can't use the word hoax. The word fake has also been appropriated. Donald Trump kind of took that one. You could use psychological operation. I prefer to use simulated news events. Simulated news events, because that is what they are. Mass casualty drills presented as real. Dwayne Garrett says they don't have to know they're writing for the controllers. They skim off everything and everyone. Yeah, no doubt. Need to know basis. It would compromise people to have too much information. That's why they have to remain insulated. Like if Neil deGrasse Tyson knew the truth, he wouldn't be able to tell such compelling stories. I listened to his podcast, Star Talk, and he is enamored with the universe. He loves balls in space. He's into the whole thing, the Big Bang and everything. Now, the difference between the flat earther and the flat universer is worth talking to here. The flat universer, which is you if you don't believe in flat earth, if you don't think the earth is flat, if you think the earth is a ball, then you subscribe to flat universe. Your solar system is flat. Conservation of angular momentum. Your galaxies are flat. Your solar system is flat because of the same thing that causes everything else to be flat. Flat is the rule, not the exception. The fact that we're on a ball doesn't really mean anything if the universe itself is ultimately flat. So the flat universers believe that science has figured everything out and that we know all there is to know until you get to the edge of the universe, so light years away. But we have all this stuff. We pretty much know it all. Whereas the people who are questioning the shape of the world don't take for granted that it's a ball and that it's a finite object, are now having to look at this as, well, actually, the question of what's at the edge of the universe is much closer. Much, much closer. In other words, they're assuming that a lot of stuff is accounted for and known, and I'm just saying that's symbolic. Believing that it's all darkness. I think darkness, like space, the blackness of space, I think darkness is symbolic of ignorance. The wilderness of darkness, referred to in the Masonic oaths that the normies are in, the hoodwinked. Yeah, the wilderness of darkness. They surrounded you with darkness, like in The Village. In the movie The Village, oh, there's nowhere else to go. It's all just monsters and wicked people beyond our village. Well, the globe model is a village surrounded by ignorance. And I'm just saying that those of us questioning the model are not assuming to know it all. We have a lot more question marks, and they're much closer. We don't accept the answers. And the people who do accept the answers fall for anything and everything. Oh yeah, there's a new star they just discovered 4.2 trillion light years away. Look at this. James Webb Telescope only cost $10 billion. Look what it showed us. And all the people who believe in deep space are like, wow, that's so amazing. Their jaws drop. They look like that soy jack meme, pointing at it. Look how amazing it is. And the next day you find out it's as fake as Jussie Smollett's lynching. Some scientist took a slice of churroso, stuck it on a starry backdrop and said, look, it's a distant star. And they all fell for it. So my point being, the people who think they know it all and that the people questioning the globe don't know what they're talking about or are just somehow doing everything wrong, approaching this whole thing wrong, I'm sorry, but you're dupes. And you're so dupable. And it's hilarious. It's also kind of sad. If you fell for the space salami with millions and millions of others, hundreds of millions, billions probably, if they put that in a textbook, nobody would question it. The only people who didn't believe in the space salami were the skeptics about space news, which would be flat earthers mostly. Because you have a lot of skeptics about news on the ground who still believe what they see in space. 1 foot in the matrix, 1 foot out. Just like the only people who didn't fall for Jussie Smollett were the auto hoaxers. Think about it. Two major hoaxes that everybody fell for because they believe everything at screen value. This is where it's at. Jussie the gay Tupac. Yeah, he called himself the gay Tupac the day after when he was talking about how he survived this near assassination attempt. Wayne Dion says Jupiter image has a creepy face for Halloween. I saw there was a picture of a giant hand, like the hand of God. They love to do this, like in space. Christmas is coming. There's a big snowman in space. Halloween's coming. Big skull in space. Oh, look, there's a big heart-shaped asteroid just in time for Valentine's. St. Patrick's Day, big four-leaf clover asteroid. Like, they just make it up as they go. And it's all bad Photoshop. Jupiter has a creepy face in haunting NASA video. I see it. It kind of looks like, is it Boogie Oogie? Is that the guy, the Boogeyman cartoon character from? Yeah, look at that. Totally real. Just in time for Halloween. It's just a painting, just a photo. It's not an actual camera out there taking the picture. Okay, let me go through some comments. I see something interesting. Eddie F says, how is QOC a Fed? He's an auto hoaxer. Oh, quantum of consciousness. Somebody called him a Fed. Eddie F says, I highly doubt he's a Fed. He doesn't sell shirts or ask for money. Well, the Feds get paid. They wouldn't need to ask for money. I don't get a paycheck from the Feds. I rely on Patreon to keep the lights on here. And I appreciate everyone's support. It's been another month here at the IPS headquarters. We have moved into an office space. If you don't know, we have a conference room where on Saturdays, we're going to begin a series of IPS cyber symposiums. And I have some real good some powerful ammunition that many have probably not even seen yet. The types of arguments that we have to posit for the believers in the ISS. But we're going to be using the conference room here on weekends from now on. If I was a Fed, I would probably not be censored either. I mean, if you think about it, it's crazy. We can barely manage 1,000 subs on YouTube these days. We're getting close, though. Not that I'm complaining. You know, YouTube is what it is, but it's like a public commons, and the only reason why we're here is we cannot allow ourselves to be excluded. But what we're building is bigger and more important anyway. The parallel media. We're releasing our own Kraken, you could say. You know, I've been talking about the symbol of the raft. The raft being a group of penguins on the sea of irrelevance, the sea of misinformation, and how we're assembling this raft. But the idea is once the raft gets big enough, what happens then? You know, once the raft gets large enough, it's something that the mass media can no longer ignore, and it becomes large enough that it draws the attention of a lot of people who are still with the world stage news. Like, in other words, the auto hoax demographic itself is huge, but it's not self-aware. It's not a quote movement. They all get lumped in with alt news and conspiracy. But I'm saying that once this raft gets big enough, auto hoaxing becomes a self-aware, separate approach to media, what I'm calling a parallel media, meaning we're not just countering the mainstream like all these robots called alt media. Our direction is aimed at critiquing mediation itself. And when there's enough of us in this raft, critical mass or critical raft as I've been calling it, then we could say that yes, we have awakened the crack Gwyn. That's why when you donate through Ko-Fi, it plays the Godzilla noise in the background. I mean, we kind of appropriated their symbol, the Kraken symbol. But now, I haven't listened to, let me go ahead and go through, oh, here it is. Copaesthetic says, QOC thinks the mass shootings are real. Eddie F says, he says they're all fake. We'll have to check. We'll have to check, because there are times where people do grow out of the false flag fallacy. That's one of the common things that tells you that somebody is an agent or a dupe. So you can say somebody's a Fed, but what we're really saying is they're either a Fed or they are selling or spreading narratives that are planted by Feds and federal informants. And this is not a conspiracy theory. The IPS has dealt with federal informants. You wouldn't believe how many people in the flat earth or the conference earthers in the conference earth community are, and I'm not judging people. Actually, some of them I am judging actually because there were some pretty bad people. I'm just saying there's something problematic about a niche conference like Flat Earthers, where 6 out of 8 speakers are pedos on parole or something like that. Maybe a slight exaggeration, but sex offenders, pedos. I mean, one of them, look, the founder of the Biblical Flat Earth Society, Philip Stallings, who made movies with Rob Skiba and Robbie Davidson, that guy went to prison for 56 counts of child abuse. And this guy had the biggest Facebook flat earth group for the longest time. Founder of Biblical Flat Earth Society is charged. And so this guy was literally doing documentaries. He did a 6-part documentary called The Globe Lie with the guys that did the Flat Earth Conference. We're talking Skiba, Robbie Davidson. I mean, that's crazy. Imagine that. You got a friend for 5 years who's doing this. Founder of Biblical Flat Earth Society charged with 56 counts of exploitation of a minor after stash of CP found on his computer. 56 counts. Anyway, he's been locked away. But I'm like, that's very close. And then you find out that Robbie Davidson's speaker that he chose was a pedo on parole. I'm like, this is pretty sick. So when I say that there are feds and peds, there are. They're all over. That they're used, they're handled, and they're used by alt media, weirdly enough, in conspiracy circles, like limited hangout operations. And so if somebody isn't a Fed, but they're still pushing those narratives, then they're dupes. And what would you rather follow, a Fed or a dupe? Anybody in 2023 still talking about false flags or dead people, they're behind. They're not, it's not that they're behind, that they're operating with the MSM plus frame of reference. Their head is still in the box. You have to step it. They're not skeptics. They're anti-skeptic. In fact, I'd say this. If you're anti-auto hoax, you're anti-skeptic. The non-skeptical media includes not just the mainstream, but the alt. Nicotrama says 9/11 is the event the controllers want guardrailed. They need people to think it was real. They need them to have the fear. Yeah, there's that. And unlike all these shootings, which you could say this is just a psyop here, it's local. 9/11 was a global psyop, meaning every news media agency in the world was on the same sheet, the same slate, the same monolithic. I guess you would call it. I mean, I refer to the mainstream media itself as monolithic because it's like they all have the same big picture and the same operators when you get to a certain level. And Stanley Kubrick used the symbol of the monolith to represent the movie screen and the merging of man with the screened reality. And 9/11 is a big tell. The fact that 9/11 was a major simulated news event that was passed off as real, and that it's in all the history books, there's no real refutation to it on any sort of major platform. It's accepted history. It's settled journalism. It tells you that there is a monolithic control over media everywhere. We already have a one world religion. If you just update your definition of religion, and if you can look at what's coming to the screen as the de facto world state religion, which it is, and now they're just in the process of going through like the Council of Nicaea. They're getting rid of apocrypha, non-canonical, heretical texts, simplifying it. And this is where Musk comes into the picture with X. You know, I describe him as the leading promulgator of mind junk. That's by design, this flood of misinformation. They're asking the public to demand censorship. They're asking the public to demand that in order that we all get on the same sheet so we can be one, we need to have a consolidated media itself. Like the TV, the screen, the monolith, that is the new Bible for this new world church. But we're in the process of having this Bible censored or purified. And all of the competing texts are going to be burned. That's why they don't have to censor us. They know they're just going to burn our content. MZC 1012 says, wait, what's the difference between a false flag and auto hoaxing if it's meant to blame another country regardless if anyone died or not? Here's the difference. If it's a false flag, it means that somebody did something and blamed it on somebody else, but the thing happened. If it's a hoax, it means that the media faked the event. So, in other words, if you call it a false flag, you're actually looking at the event itself as though it's authentic, and you're not looking at the media as the production company, the actual producers. There's a huge difference. It's the difference between having your head through the screen and stepping back away from the screen. The perspective of the mainstream, like whatever's reported is real, is what I call MSM. If you say there's more to it, like another party actually did it, dressed up as this group, or it was provoked, it's a false flag. Well, then you're adding on. That's MSM plus. My position is you have to subtract before you can add. Before you can add on additional facts, you need to subtract from what they actually claim to be true. What can you verify? What can't you verify? MSM minus. So in other words, false flaggers are deeper into deception than the mainstream view because they accept the mainstream view at face value. It's not skeptical. False flag theory is a non-skeptical take that is the counter narrative. It's the knee-jerk planted counter narrative to every mainstream story. They do not presume that the media is simulating news. False flag theory does not account for news simulation. What we're doing is entirely different. And this is why they always say false flag. I saw Code Monkey Z. I saw these big channels out there saying, oh, the shooting in Maine is a false flag. It's MK Ultra. I'm sorry, but you're adding a bunch of stuff, assuming the event actually happened. And we haven't established that it has happened. Eddie F says, Mac was one of the first people who started the empty hospitals during COVID. Oh, yes. Mac Parhar. Is his name an anagram for pharmacos? I remember someone had mentioned something like that. You know, pharmacos, like the sacrificial goat. He seemed like he was a sacrificial goat for anyone challenging the big COVID narratives. And he got a lot of coverage. It was almost like a reality TV show focused on his life. I was like, oh, this flat earther went over to this conference. Then he came back over here and his nose is running. The Daily Beast couldn't get enough of him. But he did some great work in that regard, and that was because his hot yoga studio was shut down. He said that hot yoga would cure it. There was some he said that, and of course he's supposedly dead. I don't know. Look, I just don't know. Bob Nodal recently passed as well, said the same thing. He said you could kill COVID by inhaling from a hair dryer, a blow dryer. Anyway, the early days of COVID were pretty funny. Just to, thinking back, everybody thought it was real except for us. Like everyone was like, "Oh, it's real. Just suck on a blow dryer. It's real. Do some hot yoga. It's real. Do this. Malaria drugs, and everybody's gonna die, and the deep state's gonna be taken." It's like everyone got sucked into this fantasy. We here at the IPS did not. We were expecting that the next phase of the mind war would be accelerating on 3/11. And just so you know, when they fake nuke Seattle, I'm not going to fall for it. Okay, commenter MZC1012 says, do you think it could be a situation in Israel where the original attack was a hoax and they had actors in place, but the goal was to go into Gaza and wipe them out, and also use AI-generated videos to scare the residents? See, that's a common theme for people who want to cling to the idea that, okay, well, maybe they're using hoaxes to cause kinetic events. It's a very common thing, like the Derek Chauvin thing, George Floyd, hoax, but then you have real stuff that happens. And that is an interesting point. Can you have a hoax to create something real? Well, yeah, that's kind of what is being insinuated here. But do I think that's the case? No, I think it's fake on both sides. I think it's the same production company playing both sides. I think it's literally the village out there. I think it's the village. I think it's a microcosm of what they want for the whole world. Like the Iron Dome. I think they want the Iron Dome for the whole world because of meteors, because of asteroids, because of space junk. That space is the great unifier. Space is the new heaven for this new world order religion that everybody accepts as real, and the threats from space would be uniting, like an alien threat. Base David says, when Israel wants people dead, they make it a reality. No, see, this is what I mean. The people who are pro-Israel or are going to have one take on it, and it's like atrocity propaganda pissing contests. And the people who hate Israel are automatically going to believe that they're guilty. So, like, what I'm saying is that if you believe one side is doing it for real, you're on the political horseshoe. And I hope you're enjoying yourself. Like, I'm not on it, not judging, but you're on the political horseshoe. You're on the right side. You're basically the equivalent of woke. Critical Jew theory is woke. It's just the right-wing version. Like, you know what critical race theory is? Critical race theory is this version of the West, of America, that takes into account systemic oppression based on race, ultimately white power. So that, you can blame racism for everything in whiteness itself as a construct. That's coming from the left. Critical race theory. On the far fringe right, you have critical Jew theory. It's the exact same thing, but instead of whiteness, it's Jews. But it's the same construct. It's grievance politics on both sides. Woke are aggrieved. The people who are always blaming Israel are aggrieved. They're oppressed. Oh, we're being canceled. We're being replaced. These are our oppressors. And they're secretly in control of everything. And if we could just get rid of thisness, whiteness, Jewishness, the world would be saved. It's like, well, who's in control? Jews or whites? Who's correct? Critical Jew theory or critical race theory? I think that you're both part of equivalent systems. You might as well, it's like Soy Boy versus Proud Boy. Who's correct? Antifa or Proud Boys? They look the same to me. So no, I don't think anybody's dying. I've seen plenty of dead baby videos on Twitter, and they all look fake. They look animatronics. Whenever I see them, I reply with Chucky doll GIFs. It's like, no, I'm not really fazed by your horror show. But you know what leads people is their cognitive bias and what they want to believe. The people who hate Israel, hate Jews or whatever, they will want to believe that Palestinians are being killed. They want that to be true. Just like the people who want to take your guns want there to be a bunch of dead kids. And then on the other side, you got Ben Shapiro. Nobody wanted dead babies more than Ben Shapiro. He wanted a pyramid of baby skulls to stand on so he could grandstand and call for war. But nobody's dying. Anybody who's saying that people are dying has a political agenda. And I respect your beliefs, but you don't know it to be true. Okay, let us continue here. I thought this was funny. Jack Posevec had this conversation about the Antichrist with, who is this? He's on a show on human events, and he's talking about the Antichrist, and I find this to be kind of funny. Let me play this.
We can't know exactly who the Antichrist is, but what do we know about the Antichrist?
I think one of the most sobering biblical revelations about who the Antichrist is he will be the one who establishes peace amongst the nations. He will be a false Messiah, a false Christ, a false political leader. He will be the one who unites seemingly the Jews, the Muslims, the Christians. There will be miracles.
Now, that's enough of that for now. I'm just pointing it out. It's ironic that these two are major MAGAs. They're way into Trump. This is Jack Pizzagate Posevec. And they're like, I wonder who the Antichrist is. It's like, oh, they've been calling Donald Trump Jesus. They've been calling him Moses, King David. We're waiting for his apotheosis. We're waiting for you just to call him God. But the Christification of Donald Trump is very well known. This has been going on for some time. It's intentional. It's echoed throughout the media. Holy Week 4/4 he's taken in, and SNL has him as Jesus at the Last Supper. I mean, this has been a theme. Jim Caviezel, who played Christ at the age of 33 in that Mel Gibson film, Passion of the Christ. Jim Caviezel's like, now Trump wears the mantle of Moses. Anyway, Trump is the Antichrist from a world stage script perspective, like it or not. Bezos is Nimrod, like it or not, just the way it is. It's just funny that they don't see it. Based Pacman says the beheaded babies is a recycled incubator. Not only is it a recycled incubator story, those babies were recycled on the 33rd anniversary. So incubator babies, 10/10, 1990. Beheaded babies, 10/10, 2023. 33 years to the day. Speaking of based, by the way, the word based, which is like a right-wing phrase, the white nationalists are called the base, and Al-Qaeda translates to the base. Commenter says, do you disagree that Israel and Palestine have been in conflict? No, these conflicts are real. Obviously, it's like you do have these dialectics that are played upon, but I'm saying the atrocity propaganda that motivates is fake. And I don't believe anything without evidence. And if you do, that's fine. If you're like, I saw it on the screen, I believe C say, it's like, okay, well, you're a believer. And this is the thing. They want you to be believers. There's a qualitative difference. There's a major philosophical difference as far as your philosophical approach to life if you're a believer versus a knower. And believers are assumed to have the moral high ground. Oh, they just believe it. Just let them believe what they believe. I'm like, what do you mean? That's like a lower quality form of information. What about knowers? No, they don't want you to be a knower because there's a process to knowing stuff, a process of excluding information, a process of filtering out the logical fallacies. And if the public was comprised of knowers, they wouldn't be brainwashable. They need you to be believers. It's like they don't need atheists in church. And they need believers in the mainstream media church. Auto-hoaxing represents a form of atheism to their religion, to their God construct. Dwayne Garrett says, no journalist is going into a live battle. It's a bunch of cosplaying. A lot of cosplaying. Based, oh yeah, you called the other night. Yeah, look, I find it very predictable though. Like, again, anybody who's on Team Hitler is going to believe the atrocity propaganda that makes their enemies look bad. And they're going to feign sympathy for those victims. Like, you don't care about Palestinian babies, heads chopped off on the grounds. You don't care about them. But you like the fact that that makes your enemies look bad. Narrative over facts when you live in a story-driven, reality-fluid, world stage-based existence. I mean, it's like a alternate reality. Choose your own adventure. Like those books. It's a choose your own reality. Reality fluidity. Mandela affected universe. It may as well be like a Mandela effect. It's like it doesn't matter if nobody else believes it. I do, and in my reality, it's real. That's their thing. In my reality. Here's Elon Musk who says George Soros hates humanity. Again, this is another hoax. This is World Wrestling Entertainment. You got the bad billionaires. So Musk is a good billionaire on the right wing, and he's fighting the bad billionaire on the left wing, George Soros. But then if you're on the left, you're like, George Soros is a good billionaire. Elon Musk is a bad billionaire. George Soros will fight the bad billionaire. It's like that. Like Mike Rothschild, the author, thinks George Soros is a good billionaire and Musk is a bad billionaire. Which is which? They can't be both. Is Musk a villain? Or is he a savior? Bill Gates, is he a villain or is he a savior? The fact that they are both of these tells you that we have a schism.
Boris, I don't know. I mean, he had a very difficult upbringing. In my opinion, he fundamentally hates humanity. That's my opinion.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Well, he's doing things that erode the fabric of civilization. Getting DAs elected who refuse to prosecute crime. That's part of the problem in San Francisco and LA and much other cities.
Remember when San Francisco had that stabbing of the guy who created Cash App? And Musk is like, yeah, you can't even walk around in San Francisco. Then you find out it was a targeted assassination by somebody known to the victim. And this is part of the buildup on the narrative of we need Batman in Gotham, and then Jordan Neely took out the guy in the subway, or Jordan Neely was strangled on the subway by Daniel Penny. And I'm just pointing it out here that this is World Wrestling Entertainment hoaxery. MZC 1012 says, I do agree that those dead babies are fake. I'm just saying I know that the way that they have fought is real. Yeah, it's tricky, but this is the thing. Like, there's this scene at the end of Vanilla Sky when Tom Cruise learns that it's all a simulation. And his psychiatrist is like, I'm not a simulation, I'm real. And Tom Cruise is like, okay, well, what are your kids' names? And he draws a blank. He couldn't remember. And he's like, wait a minute. I'm real, right? And then he realizes he's fake. And when you're saying, I know these conflicts are real, and then you really think about it, what do I really know? You might realize I actually don't know what I thought that I knew, what I accepted by osmosis, what I accepted based on rumor or consensus. So I'm very careful to distinguish between what I know, what I believe, and I expect that if someone's going to say they know something, they should qualify it. Like people used to call in and say, I know somebody that died on 9/11. And I'm like, what's their name? Then you hear them clicking and searching and typing, looking up a name on the internet. It's like, sorry, too late. All right, moving on. Oh, this is a great one. This is Donald Trump being embraced, a very gentle hug. It's a very gentle hug by Jesus Christ. So he's either Jesus or he's close to Jesus, or he's going to be the next Jesus. I don't think he's crucifiable. Certainly not on a dogwood tree. Base says, convenient since Musk wants X to be the American version of that Chinese everything app. Yeah, and think about this too. Musk, the consolidation of everything, the everything app. He had the glowing X on the Twitter headquarters when he created this thing. Constantine, who consolidated, we're talking about the same exact historic role. Constantine had a vision for uniting the empire under the cross when he saw a glowing cross. So it's a repeated theme here about consolidating everything. But for some time, I've been describing Musk as bringing in space communism. And here he is, adopting this Chinese system. And I think space communism is the right way to explain it. I've been describing it this way. And if you look at the beginning, like the early Russian rocket pioneers, it was all about communism on Mars. There's like I think Red Star is a book came out more than 100 years ago about a perfect communist society on Mars and how the Martians are going to teach us how to live here. Well, Musk is, of course, leading us to Mars. And Mars is all code. In the New Age movement, they call it the age of Mars, the age of Horus, the age of the crowned conquering child who replaces the patriarchy. It's kind of a androgen child god. Musk has a verified ketamine prescription addiction, says base David Packman. Musk fakes space. There are no orbiting satellites. Eddie F says there's no such thing as a good billionaire. I don't know if that's true. I mean, not every single fortune is evidence of a crime. Not all property is theft. But it is an interesting kind of a point here, though, to bring up, is that people look up to him as like, oh, he's fighting this culture war. He's worried about civilization. We're running out of people. You know, he espouses all these opinions, but he also knows that space is fake. Like he's a top tier world stage liar. But lies give you power and influence. Like look at this guy. This is Summer TC Axel Vasa on Twitter. This individual does selfies all day long. A lot of selfies. Like he's in love with himself. Like I feel dirty looking at his pictures. Like the way he stares into the lens. It's just really awkward. He's got 36,000 followers. And most of them are MAGA women who believe that he's JFK Jr. Look, Joan Mick says, "Thank you, I cannot sleep anymore." Yep, he's keeping her up at night. He's got groupies. Like he never had any influence. He was never a rock star. Nobody knew who this guy was. But he found a niche. He realized, hey, JFK Jr. is not coming back. I'm going to kind of hint that it's me, drop clues, and he's basically living like JFK Jr. back from the dead. He's taken all of JFK Jr.'s groupies. Eddie F says, does anybody have any good movies to watch? You know, I watch movies for their predictive programming value. I want to know what's happening in the future. I want to know what's on the mass mind. So when I watch movies, I don't watch it to be entertained or to have my mind entrained to any of their visions, any of their narratives. All of their movies presuppose so many lies to be true. Just watching a movie for entertainment value is auto-propagandizing. This is where it's at. It says, are billionaires real? Yes, there are billionaires. There obviously are billionaires, but these world stage billionaires like Musk and Bezos, I think they're constructs and their design. Like, okay, Bezos is there to show us what happens when too much money gets into the hands of individuals. Too rich. He's there to challenge Gaia, to challenge Globe with this capitalistic system and to be taken down. He's a fall guy. That's a huge part of Bezos' story. You know, there's a part of Bezos' story that ties in to David Bowie, Man Who Fell to Earth, who, like Bezos, just descended into New Mexico. Don't know who the father is, just sort of appeared here, but started from scratch, built the world's biggest corporation, and built himself a space program to go back to Mars. Some interesting stories there. The Man Who Fell to Earth. And there's a new version of it, which has some fascinating aspects to it. I did a review on it. But anyway, Musk and Bezos are there to be examples. I specifically think Musk is there to be a fall guy for free speech. Yeah, Thomas Newton crashes down to Earth seeking a way to ship water to his planet, which is suffering from a drought. Again, global warming type stuff. But he travels down to Earth from a distant planet, lands in New Mexico. He arrives on a mission to get back to his home planet, and he creates World Enterprises Corporation. Another interesting connection between the Man Who Fell to Earth, David Bowie, and Bezos is the eye thing. If you look at Bowie and all of his pictures, you'll notice that one of his pupils is always emphasized, always dilated, and they've done this since the beginning. He was also Starman, which is an anagram for Mr. Satan, another person who fell to Earth. He was Starman in the Tesla Roadster, and I think he played the role of Nikola Tesla in a movie. But there's a lot of interesting connections between David Bowie and David Bowman, Space Odyssey, Space Oddity, and our collective journey into the space age. First music video recorded in space was Ground Control, Space Oddity. I'm going through some comments. Eddie F says, the system won't allow an honest person to be a billionaire. I would have to look into that. I've only known one. And that person made his fortune in the oil industry. 5 Minutes of Fame says a new clip came out of Buzz saying we never went. You know, I don't know about these Buzz clips taken out of context, but there was one interview where Buzz is talking about how he heard the engine as they hit the runway or something. He made some comment that made it sound like maybe when they went into the simulation, they were like actually being transported somewhere by plane to make it real. But somebody cut him off. Like sometimes they do go off the rails, but I don't think that there's any kind of soft disclosure. He just sounds befuddled. But I think they have a plan that if it ever is revealed that Apollo 11 was fake, they'll say we had to fake it to beat the Russians, and most people believe that. I mean, it's mind-blowing that someone like James Fetzer, for example, has a book that deconstructs the moon landing, A to Z. It's totally fake. But he persists in believing in outer space and secret space programs, and they had to fake it to trick the Russians. And that narrative guardrails people. It keeps them from recognizing that the space program itself is fake. Yes, based David Pakman says Buzz is constantly dropping drunken haikus. Yeah, Buzz Aldrin again is probably not the astronaut that William Shatner is. But they are essentially the same thing, cosplayers. Space travel is cosplay. And if you really want to compare the two, Shatner has cosplayed in more simulated space environments than Buzz. Buzz went to the moon. Captain Kirk went everywhere else. Matthew Perry death being investigated by LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division. All right, story gets a little more intricate here. We'll continue to follow that. Again, we talked about the fake shooting in Lewiston, Maine, and this connection was made. I want to reiterate this point. There was this little girl on TV who was at the bowling alley and was grazed by a bullet, supposedly. In the picture, she's holding a globe bowling ball because she's at a bowling alley. Just like the globe bowling ball carried by Michael Moore in Bowling for Columbine. Are we a nation of gun nuts, or are we just nuts? Now, I'm pointing this out because this is part of the same PSYOP. All these PSYOPs happen in the same fictional universe. 9/11 was not an anomaly. It's ancient history. It's hardly worth talking about these days because there's so many others, and people missed the forest for the trees. And if you look at all of the shootings, mass shootings, concerts, and schools, it's all built on stories and narratives. And recently the narratives have changed to where more of the shooters are coming from a left-wing side, which causes the right wing to care. Right wing didn't care about Sandy Hook, but they care about Nashville. Why is that? Because the shooter was one of the other guys. Nick Cruz, that's one of ours. He's a MAGA. But no, this Aubrey Hale, nah, she was a lib. This shooting in Nashville is really bad. Anyway, my point is, they're all fake, they're all fictional. But when this little girl was on the screen talking about how she got shot and why do some people do bad things, and people said she was adorable, Candace Owens said she was adorable. You know, young crisis actress, they're all just hyping her up. And I'm like, wait a minute here. Shooter's on the loose. They don't know where he is. There's a worldwide manhunt. They can't find him. And one of his victims that could identify him is now putting herself on TV. Who would advise that? Would the police say, hey, we are investigating an ongoing mass murder scene. We need to convict this guy, and we want to make sure that we interview you first. Would you please not go on the news and make yourself a target? Like, none of it makes sense. I don't think that's real. I think that's an indication that the thing is fake. Base David Pakman says, every moon landing was under Nixon. Why don't people bring that up? Interesting point. Okay, I got a link here. Is it the one with Buzz? Do we want to play it? We've all heard Buzz, but I'll play it. It's not a drop. And saying the moon landing is fake without saying the space station is fake is meaningless. It's another forest for trees thing. Like, we're debating a PSYOP, the worst PSYOP ever from 50 years ago, when there's a PSYOP right now that people actively defend. Even truthers do. There are truthers out there who believe there's a space station. Why? Well, because everybody else says so. They'll say, well, there has to be something up there because a lot of people have said they have seen something up there. Oh, I see, okay. Argumentum ad populum. I get it. Lots of people say they saw something, therefore there's something there. We can't rule it out. Okay. That's your reason for believing there's a space station, despite the fact that we know they faked the moon landing. Okay, for those of you who believe the space station is real, but know the moon landing's fake, when did it become real? Did they only fake one moon landing, or are they all fake? Like, where's the line between real and fake? When did the house of cards become real? It's like, oh yeah, this thing's real. Look at that thing. It's a real solid structure, but the bottom 3 levels, yeah, those are made of cards. No, there's no foundation. It's a foundation of BS, an edifice of lies. Here's Buzz Aldrin not saying the moon landing was fake, but saying it's fake in a weird, ambiguous way.
The moon landing was
What
fake.
was the scariest moment of the journey?
Scariest. It didn't happen. It could have been scary. Certainly.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen, so in the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something.
Fascinating. I remember very clearly.
I didn't get any of that, really. I don't know. Not quite sure. That one's kind of tricky. That one sounds like he's sort of saying it, but I don't know. This one I like, though. This is the one where Conan O'Brien is claiming that he remembers the moon landing, only for Buzz to say, no, you don't. You saw an animation. There's this thing they do when there's no cameraman on the moon. So when somebody lands on the moon, there's nobody there to record it. So they provide a concurrent animation. They always have. A lot of people were like, oh, look, India's moon landing's so fake. It looks like an animation. Yeah, it is an animation. That's not meant to be the real thing. But a lot of people saw that thinking it was the real thing. Joseph Bender says, I think the moon landing was fake and the space station is real. I don't understand that line of thinking. Okay, well, when did it become... Okay, you say you believe the moon landing was fake, but then you believe space travel is real, is what you're telling me. So you think that one thing was fake, but the rest is real. Okay, I think there's a major inconsistency there. Because they don't have... They didn't do the moon landing because they don't have the technology for it. They're faking space travel, but they can make a real space station. And then when you look at the special effects, the reason why you don't believe the moon landing is because the special effects suck. Why do you believe the space station is real? Are you saying you find those special effects convincing? You want to sign off on that? Like, oh, I believe the space station looks real. What do you feel inside? Like, what do you think when you see obvious green screen glitches and augmented virtual reality and overly hairsprayed astronaut ladies? Like, do you just not see that? Because you are also crediting them with being honest and truthful about that, which is interesting. I'm just saying it's interesting. I think it's inconsistent. It's the House of Cards thing. Again, when did they become real? Did they become real in 1980? Was the space shuttle real? The space shuttle was when they still used stop motion animation. Did you find that convincing? Let's play this clip.
I think anybody who was alive at the time does. I remember my parents waking me up and we went down and we watched you guys land on the moon.
No,
which
you
was
didn't. No, you didn't.
What?
Because there wasn't any television. There wasn't anybody taking a picture. You watched animation. So you associated what you saw with...
I have very hazy memories.
Yeah, I know.
Well, no, what we saw was we all were gathered around the old curved top radio and listened.
Talking about how many feet we were going to the left and right, and then I said, contact light, engine stop.
It's
a few
exciting.
other things, and then Neil said, Houston, Tranquility Base, the Eagle has landed.
That's just
He remembers his lines. He's a great actor. In fact, he's a better actor than William Shatner. Yeah, I'm not trying to put anybody's head on the stake. I'm just saying that if you can believe the space station's real, but you know the moon landing is fake, I'm just curious as to, how do you reconcile that? Because one of those is, well, actually both of them are both things that you can only believe because of what you're seeing on a screen. So like what makes the space station more convincing? And then also orbiting satellites. You believe orbiting satellites are a thing. That's interesting too. I guess there's is it Brett Sabrill? What's the video? Like a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. That's another classic gatekeeping operation where they say, oh, we couldn't go to the moon because of the Van Allen radiation belt. But it preserves the lie of orbit. It preserves the lie of space travel. So the movie doesn't expose anything by saying the moon landing's fake if it still says that space travel itself is real. But I would ask what about the ISS is realistic to you? Like let me bring up one thing. Because if you're going to say the space station's real, you sign off on a lot of really bad evidence. So here's a fascinating thing. If you look at the space station at night and their footage, if you want to believe that this is a camera, oh, this is a camera recording a globe down below. If your eyes tell you that, I see this as a simulated environment with a camera view. This is not a camera separate from the environment. Like there's a qualitative difference, but this is what the Earth looks like at night from your space station, and this is what you're saying is real. It looks like a Christmas tree shaped like a continent. That is Earth at night. But then when Musk sent the Tesla Roadster into space and it was orbiting the Earth, whenever you saw the dark side of the Earth, guess what? It was pitch black. And I'm like, wait a minute here. How come the back side of the Earth, quote, night, as we would call it here, right? It's night. How come night is dark? Look, I can't see anything on the dark side of the globe. When Starman passes the dark side of night, it's just like the Earth is lit on one side and black on the other. And you find many examples of the Earth from space. The night side is pitch black. But then from the space station, 184 miles above, it's lit like a Christmas tree. So to me, that's a problem. My mind cannot reconcile the two. I see a contradiction. And you're like, well, fake moon landing, real space station. Well, fake came first. It's like somebody tells you a tall tale, he's a big liar. You debunked it, but then you believe his next lie. Like, I'm sorry, it's the same liar. It's a continuity error. One other thing, too. And look, I'm doing a cyber symposium on this later. If you believe in orbiting space stations and you believe in spacewalks, this is a dead giveaway. Okay, look at the next time they do a spacewalk, and I was watching some of these today. Look at the quality of the photography. This is a dead giveaway. You look at astronauts in any of the still photography, and it's always super clear, especially when it's inside of the ISS. But the external photography, it's always super clear. You can see reflections in their visors. You can see the Earth. It's just really good photography. But then when you look at spacewalk video, especially the helmet cam stuff, the lighting diffuses. And it diffuses in such a way that it looks exactly like lighting underwater, like scuba divers. So I've been getting together a lot of footage of scuba divers and comparing it to the video from outside of the space station when they're on these spacewalks. And I'm finding that the spacewalk lighting is definitely underwater. And this also goes for SpaceX. Whenever SpaceX does these, what is it, CRS, whenever they resupply the ISS, and you see the module attached to the space station out there in space, when you see the thing approach on video, it's underwater lighting. The lighting is diffused just like it's in a pool. It looks nothing like it does in the photography. And I'll provide many examples in this cyber symposium because I think that the ISS can be debunked. It's already been debunked, but there are some new points, some new angles. And yeah, again, if you're a believer in the ISS, you're a believer. I know some people believe in gnomes and some people believe in unicorns. Some people believe in fake dead kids. But fake space stations' lives don't matter. And they're going to have to bring it down eventually if they're going to bring something up with better special effects. Okay, let's see here. Eddie F says, everything about space is fake. I wonder what NASA is really for. Here's what NASA's for. NASA is for mind control, inner space. Outer space, it's a metaphor for your inner space. Space travel is an allegory for states of higher consciousness, if you look at the esoteric side. That's why it's Mach 33 to escape velocity. Exiting the material realm, 33 vertebrae, Kundalini, from the kingdom to the crown. It's all allegorical. I would even say that the solar system is a reconfigured Kabbalistic tree of life. And the snake climbing the tree is the serpent tongue you see on the NASA logo. It's all allegory. But the money, it's all going into mind control. See, this is the key. And this is a clue too, it has to do with Kubrick and how NASA is not just about space. Kubrick did Apollo 11, and some people say he only did that and he was trying to drop hints in The Shining. No. He was part of the mind control PSYOP entertainment complex itself. The Shining was also foreshadowing 9/11. It wasn't him telling on himself, not at all. But Kubrick did Apollo 11, and he also did JFK's assassination. Those are two of his things. Yep. JFK was shot by Kubrick. Now, the interesting thing is, Lee Harvey Oswald was working at Riley's Coffee Company, and several other people who worked with him were interviewed after the shooting. They went to go find these people. Hey, what was he like at the coffee company? Turns out, right before the shooting, all these people at Riley's Coffee went to go work for NASA. Or NASA adjacent. And Oswald wrote a letter to his girlfriend at the time, or his significant other, and the letter was basically saying that he thought he was going to go work for NASA. So I think that Lee Harvey Oswald did go work for NASA. But he didn't go to the moon stage. He went to the grassy knoll stage. Same director. So my point is that NASA is about much, much more than distant destinations in our future. NASA's worldview warfare. They gave us the worldview with the blue marble. And everything that NASA shows us has been to convince us we're in a closed system, climate change is real, and we need to get rid of capitalism and freedom because it's not sustainable. Catching up on some comments. I see somebody mentioning the movie Moonfall. Pop quiz. How old was the lead actor, the scientist savior, who sacrificed his life to save humanity in Moonfall? How old was the main actor at the time of the movie? Moonfall was directed by Roland Emmerich, who did Independence Day. And Independence Day did a lot of work for the PSYOP of 9/11, preparing people for falling buildings, alien attacks, unifying against the threat. Yeah, John Bradley, who sacrificed his life to save the world in that movie Moonfall, was 33. From the director of 2012, Independence Day, The Day After Tomorrow. Good movie all around. It has a lot of connections to many other movies, but the visuals it gave us of the moon falling was interesting because it has to do with space wars and space junk. And on the 1-year anniversary of Moonfall, I believe it came out on 2/4. Did it come out 2/4? Yeah, the anniversary that it came out was the date that we had that Chinese space balloon, Moonfall, in theaters, February 4th. Yeah, so 2/4, 4/2, these numbers often have to do with things falling. Lots of 42s around the whole fake space thing. But the Chinese space balloon situation, which looked like a moon, caused, yeah, here we go, from January 28th to February 4th. They shot it down on the 4th. So the U.S. shoots down Chinese spy balloon February 4th. So the 1-year anniversary of Moonfall. Angst G says, why do presidential assassins or attempted assassins always have 3 names? You know, John Hinckley's birthday was 5/29. 5/29, JFK's birthday. The nuclear age began 7/16, July 16th, at 5:29 a.m. at the Trinity site. 5/29. That was 1945. 7/16, though, interesting date. JFK Jr. dies. Eyes Wide Shut comes out. Apollo 11 takes off from Kennedy. First nuclear age begins. These dates get really intriguing, and Stanley Kubrick seems to have a lot of connections to 7/16 and everything Kennedy with his movies. Again, Apollo 11 took off from Kennedy Spaceport on that date. But yeah, the idea that John Hinckley shoots Reagan and he's got Kennedy's birthday is kind of interesting. And there are more connections than that, especially when you get into like the connections between Kennedy's assassination and Lincoln. You know, Lincoln's blood all over the Ford Theater. Kennedy's blood all over the Ford Lincoln. And the synchronicities and the connections are part of the narrative and the story. Shows you it's all fake. And that it's always been fake. And it's not going to suddenly get real. Like, oh, they're going to do some big psyop and then it's all going to get real. And then we can finally eat our storable food items and run for the hills. No, it's never going to happen. There's this thing called the Bubba effect. And it's what they use to sell a lot of apocalypse goods. But the Bubba effect is a trend of behavior postulated on Glenn Beck's show by Command Sergeant Major Tim Strong about groups of people heading for the hills when they feel threatened or when times are uncertain. And the whole point of this is that this is a kind of a theme, and this is from Rational Wiki, lifted out of Red Dawn, for example. But he says, in practice, the Bubba effect amounts to histrionic overreactions to threatening fake news, vague rumors, going from survivalist ideas, conspiracy theories. It's all basically more or less regurgitating the same old, run for the hills. But it's good for selling stuff. All right, continuing down on my notes. Again, if you want to subscribe to the newsletter, go to ips.monster and you'll be getting the newsletter with all the archives. I made a t-shirt the other day based off of this infamous clip where George W. Bush is sitting in a classroom right as 9/11 is happening, and the children are all chanting, kite, must, hit, steal, plane, and it was like, what are these kids, what are these kite, steal, hit, plane? And this was this suggested that this thing was like an inside job. I'm sure most of you have seen this. And this is when George was sitting in the classroom and somebody whispers into his ear.
Yes, kite. Get ready to read this word the fast way. Get ready. Kid. Yes, kid. Sound it out. Get ready. Kid. Sound it out. Get ready. Kid. What word? Kid. Yes, kid. Boys and girls, sound this word out. Get ready. Steal. What word? Steal. Yes, steal. Read these words the fast. Get ready. Playing. Yes, playing. Get ready. Must. Yes, must. Let's read these words the fast way without making a mistake. Get ready. Kite. Yes, kite. Get ready. Kit. Yes, kit. Get ready. Steal. Yes, steal. Get ready. Playing. Yes, playing. Get ready. Must. Yes, must. Boys and girls, pick your reader up from under your seat.
Anyway, I put it on a t-shirt, kite, steal, plane, must, hit. Looks kind of like the Twin Towers. I will put a link in the newsletter if you want to order this shirt. It's also available on Amazon. And since nobody's going to know what it means, there's no way it's going to be censored. But it is really very intriguing. Put a link there. Thanks for joining. This is Pope Elon, One-Eyed Jack on the Shelves. Same time tomorrow, if not earlier. Thanks for joining, and sign up for the newsletter.
And if you're going to pick some place to die, then why not Mars? Okay. You know, if we're born on Earth, why not die on Mars? Seems like maybe it'd be kind of exciting. But so I think given the choice of dying on Earth or dying on Mars,
I'd say, yeah, sure, I'll down in Mars.
Father, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Give us each our daily bread, and forgive us our sins. For we ourselves forgive everyone who is indebted to us. And lead us not into temptation.
And you can tell it's real because it looks so fake.
There they go. Yep.